Hey Trevor, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Nihar?
I'm good. You want to introduce yourself before we get started?
Yes, I'm Trevor Allen, and I was a Texas State Geography B finalist, and I'm an athlete, and I'm a Civil Air Patrol cadet for the Pegasus Squadron in Austin, Texas.
That's a very diverse set of competitions you got there.
Yes.
As you've probably seen, this podcast is kind of oriented towards helping competitors manage their emotions in a effective way, so it doesn't get in the way of like winning the competition or the goal that they want to achieve. And
Yeah.
so, do you have any like experiences you want to share? Anything that could help our competitors?
Yeah. Uh, Competing in an academic setting it's tough. It places a toll on your brain, and it's not something that a lot of people recognize, but your mental health is extremely important, especially if, as a student, it gets placed second a lot. And just one thing I have to say is it's what matters is how you're doing up here, and your mental health should always have a high precedent.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, that's definitely important. What I kind of how I think of it is like if you aren't good up here, like you said, then you can't really do anything with it. It's like trying to fix anything with like a broken wrench.
Exactly.
If you have like bad mental health and you're trying to do a competition or anything really, but if you have a good wrench, which is like a good mind, then it's much easier to fix that chair, fix that door, or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's stress is so common among students these days, and especially competitors and high level students, people that push in academics. It's it's quite common for example, anxiety, depression, and all sorts of mental health issues are really prevalent, and it's not being addressed. So I'm happy to be on this podcast to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, definitely. One thing I just want to clarify first is anxiety and stress are kind of thrown around as terms, and I'm not like a super professional, so I may be a little
Yeah.
wrong. But anxiety, how I understand it, is it's always bad. It's usually when you're kind of worrying about something that isn't even there yet, and
Exactly.
you shouldn't be worrying about it. But stress can be healthy or bad depending
Hmm.
on how your body reacts to it. There's definitely healthy stress, like I talked about in the episode with Soham, and there's also bad stress. And so
Absolutely.
that's one thing I wanted to clarify before we go on. But yeah, go ahead if you want to talk about if you have any experiences in mind, if you want to talk about those, or I can sort of kind of we can just discuss it however you want to do it.
Yeah. Well, just studying for the geography bee. Uh, that was quite interesting because I was not expecting to win my school the school level geography bee at all. So I wasn't really preparing, uh, to be honest. And when I won, I was just like, oh, that okay.
Yeah,
And so I took the test for the state finals or the state competition, and I got in, and that's when I realized that I started to need to take it seriously. So I started on top of homework. I was getting books, getting atlases, studying facts, landscapes, all sorts of things, and it it there was a lot of stress involved. Um, it was quite stressful to have homework, being in eighth grade and having pre-AP classes and high high level classes for because I was taking some high school classes in eighth grade on top of studying for a national level competition, because it's and trying to balance both of those, and on top of being on the soccer team and having and trying to get my pilot's license and all of that, it was quite stressful for me, and it gave me anxiety, and I started worrying about like every little thing from oh how oh what grade I got on this paper and this paper, and oh yeah, am I going to be able to succeed and get to high school, and just little things. But in the end, it all worked out, and so I still struggle with some of that today, but it does get better.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us do. No matter how good you are, there's always something that you'd be worried about. It's a matter of how well you can cope with it, I guess.
Yeah,
Because there's always going to be hate, there's always going to be negativity out there. You can't really do much to control that, but you can control how you let it get to you. And
exactly.
I think that's the most important thing is to for competitors is to change their mindset most of the time is what fixes a lot of things. And so you said you started to worry about. I just want to make one thing clear. I don't know if I understood this, but you said you started to worry about like grades and if you were going to get into high school. Was that uh like when you started doing the geography B and sort of
Yes,
realizing that, or did you also
yes.
have that
It's
before?
that's a really good point that you have. The geography B, I was just a normal student, and the geography B kind of was like an eye opener, that this is things are gonna start getting building from here. Middle school, it's gonna be over, and this is your future that you have. And I started, it was just a great realization for me to be able to see, wow, that there's so much there's so much that lies ahead. And I was worrying about it, and just even if I was going to survive the next day, of work and balance that and get things in on time, and it's it was stressful. But
Yeah. So I get a sense that because you did the geography B, that sort of I guess opened your eyes into the real world, I guess is
mhm,
how you would put it. And then that caused a lot of anxiety because you understood what the real world actually entails. And I get that's like if it was all hitting you at once then in like I think like eighth grade, I guess ish.
yeah,
If it was all hitting you then that's obviously really tough. Um, that's one thing that a lot of competitors struggle with. I guess it's the fact it's the idea that when you're doing a competition or something like that, you start to think a lot about the future. Um, and it can even be demotivating sometimes because you're like, after I do this, like, what am I going to do with the geography be like after eighth grade? It's just going to be over. And that can be really demotivating. But one thing there to notice is that whatever we feel, whatever we see, whatever we sense will always be in the present. You can't sense something in the future or in the past. That would be cool if we could, but we can't. And so,
yeah,
how I see it is that because we can only feel things in the present, we should only be worried about the present, if that makes sense. Because if you can't feel things in the future, then what's the point of worrying about the future? And if you can't see things in the past or feel things in the past, then what's the point of worrying about the past? Uh, Kind of what I think of is if you're sitting in a chair, like in the present, but you're thinking about something in the past, what you're actually feeling with your body in that moment is the chair um, and whatever you're doing. And you shouldn't take away from that moment's experience because of something else that happened 5 years ago or something else that you don't even know would happen 5 years in the future. Because when you take away from that moment, essentially you're wasting time. You're wasting time that you could have used to enjoy the present, be productive, and maybe you could even avoid what you think might happen in the future if you were to really put your mind to the present and do it. And so that's one huge issue that competitors have, is sort of being overwhelmed by the future and like what it has for them. But and planning for the future is completely different. Planning for the future is completely fine, because if you just worry yourself with the present, you won't know like where to go. You at least need to know where to go, but you shouldn't be actively worried about like what that is, if that makes sense. So
Yes.
how I think about it is, you can set a goal, a destination to work towards. That after you set that goal or destination, you should only be worried in the present, working towards that goal. It's sort of like I'll use rowing because I do rowing. It's sort of like if you say, I'm gonna row a 5K right now. When you're rowing, you don't keep thinking about I have to get to that buoy line. I have to get to that buoy line. I have to get to that buoy line. Because all that does is it distracts you from actually rowing. Because you're thinking more about getting to the buoy line than actually working to get there. The right mindset to have there is, at the start, you say, okay, I have to get to that buoy line as fast as you can. And then you work to go as fast as you can. Because if you keep on worrying about the future, you're going to lose yourself in the present. And you're going to keep on doing that over and over again with your life until you realize that you didn't really even get to live it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely. That's actually there's a name for that. It's called being mindful. I don't know if you've heard of that, but mindfulness, and it's mindfulness has been proven time and time again to lower stress and help you. It's a good way to manage your stress, focus on the present and living in the present, having those goals, but being mindful and enjoying every little thing around you and focusing on, for example, if you're sitting just like sitting down on the chair, the feel of the chair around you and how it cushions around you, and just focus on what you're currently doing rather than stressing about some goal in the vast future. And when you reach that goal, it's very important to give your body and your mind some sort of reward, to give some sort of incentive, because when you receive an incentive, your brain is less stressed, and it gives you motivation to do it again, or to continue completing these goals. So it gives you something to work for. Like, oh, I'm just doing this. Oh, I have to do this. But if you give yourself a goal, it won't feel like it's for nothing, and you'll get some sort of value out of it.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've noticed is like a lot of people, when they're recommending like study tips for anything, or not even study tips, like literally just doing any competition, like even sports, they go like, once you reach a goal, don't give yourself a reward, because then you'll get addicted to the reward and do the activity for the reward. And that's not really right, because
No,
if you were truly addicted to the reward, then why even like do the activity in the first place? Like
exactly.
if you're gonna say I'm gonna treat myself to an ice cream uh after every week I do like 6 days of workout, then why, if you really were addicted to the ice cream, then you would just eat the ice cream every day. But
Exactly.
like you said, it's really important to give yourself incentives to do what you want to do, because even if you're truly passionate about something, um you still need to reward yourself, because you can't really, I know a lot of people say like the real reward is like knowledge, the real reward is the experience of rowing the boat. The real reward is making friends in basketball or whatever. That can be a reward, but if that reward doesn't satisfy you enough to do that activity, then you need to kind of push yourself more with another reward. There's nothing wrong with giving yourself something that can help you work towards something you're passionate about. And
Absolutely.
it's kind of like it's anything, it's like a study tool in that sense. Like if you're gonna say if you're gonna say the real thing is to gain knowledge and stuff, then don't use flashcards. Why are you using flashcards? It's that's one thing that's like I don't really support. But I know some people get addicted to those things, but then again, that means they're not passionate about the activity that they're doing, so they shouldn't
Exactly.
even be doing it in the first place.
Exactly.
But yeah, I totally agree with giving yourself an incentive every once in a while.
Yeah. And one more thing that is really helpful to me is having an outlet, you know? For example, having an outlet to put all of your feelings and emotions into, you know. For me, it's exercise. I love just, for example, just going to a basketball court, shooting some hoops, just putting my energy out, you know, putting the feeling of my feet on the pavement. It just it's there's something about it, you know, and some not a lot of well, it's exercise is it's your preference, but it's just find something healthy that you can uh, use to cope with your emotions, not get rid of them, but to cope with them and to accept them, and that's a game changer. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. For me, that's rowing. Just getting to get away from everything and be on the water, even though it's really painful. It still gets you to I don't know, just like you said, like your feet hitting the ground, just hearing the oars swish past the water and stuff like that. It's really calming and peaceful. And so definitely it's important to have an outlet. I know people that don't give themselves an outlet or they have an outlet that's not healthy, like um
substance
drugs,
use.
alcohol, yeah,
Yeah.
things like that. And yeah, like you said, it's important to have a healthy outlet to let out your stress. I know people that haven't give themselves an outlet and they'll be like, I don't need my emotions. Like I'm a robot. I don't need emotions. I'm just gonna prepare for this competition. But then after the competition, uh they have so much mental health damage that they didn't know they had because they blocked their emotions. And then once
Exactly.
they're out of the competition, they have nothing to block that because it was the
Mm-hmm.
competition that was sort of blocking their emotions from spilling out. And now that competition's not there anymore, especially for the people that don't win.
Mm-hmm.
That gate just releases, and then it's an entire like 10 years of mental health damage, and uh,
Exactly.
it's much more, it's much more, I guess, much less effective doing it that way. And
Exactly. Yeah.
it's sort of, again, it's sort of being in the present and paying attention to your emotions rather than thinking, if I hold these away now, I can deal with them later. Um, but in reality, your emotions aren't like a singular thing; they build up over
Mm-hmm.
time. And if you let it build up to a mountain, then you're gonna have to spend the entire time of your life climbing that mountain.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really important to not avoid your emotions. You know, you in the end you have to accept them at some point. They aren't just gonna go away and disappear. You have to accept them, and it's your choice whether you want to do it the healthy way or just let it roll over you and just take control of your life. You know, you want to be able to accept your emotions and take control of them. You know, and that's in competing. Sometimes you just want to avoid them and just push them to the side, but then again, you have to deal with them at some point, you know, and they're only going to amass. So yeah, you make a valid
Uh,
point.
yeah. Another thing about that is Man, I just forgot what I was gonna say. Oh
It's
yeah,
okay.
I was saying another like the thing that's like that's even proved by like physical laws. I always use this for mental health somehow. But energy cannot be lost or gained, but it can only be transferred. So like if you're not gonna take it out in a healthy way now, you're gonna have to take it out later and it's just gonna add up. That's sort of how I think about it.
Mhm.
You can't really like your emotions are there when they're with you. And oh, this is the point I was gonna make. Whenever we have physical
Mhm.
pain, like whenever our legs are sore, or when our ribs are hurting, or when even when we have a headache, not like an emotional headache, but a physical headache, we complain so much. We tell everybody we know in like a 5 mile radius. We get ice water, we drink a lot of water, we sit down, we relax. But when you have the slightest stress, or even if you have so much stress that you're harming yourself, you don't do anything about it. You just sit there and hurt yourself, and you don't tell anyone about it. You don't take a break. You don't do any of that, which I find completely like bizarre
Yeah,
because mental pain is still pain, and
exactly.
I don't get why people would treat it differently than physical pain because it's still
Yeah.
pain. And I under uh, here, let me rephrase what I say. I understand why some people treat it differently. It's because they don't know that fact. They think that mental pain is like they think every mental pain is some sort of disorder or something is wrong with them.
Mhm.
So then
Yeah.
but they don't realize like small amount of stress or even like a large amount of stress is completely normal, just like if you get a paper cut.
Exactly.
Like putting a bandage on a paper cut is just like talking to someone if you have a lot of
Yeah.
stress for a test that's coming up. um, you don't let your finger keep bleeding if you have a paper
Exactly.
cut. At least you wash it off.
Exactly.
But what people are doing for mental health is they cut themselves even more to cure that
Exactly.
paper cut.
Yeah. And
And
one thing, oh, you can go
yeah,
ahead.
you can go ahead. I wasn't gonna say
Okay.
anything.
All right. But one thing I want to say from personal experience is I still do, I beat myself up and I'm so harsh on myself, to do better and do better. And I, this stress just, it gets to me sometimes, and it's just, I find myself that not reaching out for help sometimes, and I feel like I lack that social support, you know and especially since the pandemic, it's just been so hard to find somebody to talk to, or somebody that I can, or something that I can do to just, you know, help with the stress, help manage it. And it's mental health does get ignored by many people, even though it's so prevalent. Like, I was reading a study that 75% of students report some sort of like uh, sadness, fear, or stress in their life, in their and so it's very common, more common than not, to experience stress and and mental pains, you know, and people just aren't doing enough about it. Maybe it's because you can't physically see it, that it makes it, in some people's brains, just not as valid, but it is as valid as, you know physical pain, or something that you can see. you know just because you can't see what's going on in someone's head doesn't mean it should be ignored. And that's one thing that really needs to be stressed. And one thing, just living in Texas is one of the worst states for mental health. It was ranked 49 out of 50 for mental health for mental health services. It may come as a surprise for some people, not for me, but um, it's 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 disappointing, and it's it needs to be addressed, and especially for youth too, because of the alarming suicide rates that are how fast they're climbing, and it's sad. It's really sad to see this. But do you think that I think we could leave some links in the description below, right? For
Yeah,
some,
I can
yeah,
definitely do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty sad. Like it's almost like suicide has become, I don't want to say this, but like popular.
mm-hmm.
Like I'm
Prevalent,
sure prevalent is the word,
yeah,
not popular.
yeah,
uh I think at least one everybody knows at least one person that's committed suicide. Um Probably not everybody, but most people know at least one
you
person
have a
that committed
family member
suicide.
that knows a family
Yeah,
member, you know,
yeah, exactly. And it's just like really sad, especially because you're like, maybe if I talked to that person, they would
exactly.
have stopped. And then you start to, it's almost contagious. And then you start to like doubt your mental health, like, wait, why did this person want to die? And then you're like, wait, I'm having these sort of things in my life too. And then it kind of like spreads like that. And I think not addressing it just makes it a vicious cycle because if somebody commits suicide and we can all actually talk about our mental health instead of all being sad because of that person, and I bet they would, I not happy because they died, but I think they would want us to be inspired to not go through the same things they did. I think
Absolutely.
if you know somebody that committed suicide, I think if they were still alive or if they're watching over you right now, they would want you not to do what they did and sort of take their life as an example um, of something to be celebrated rather than seen as shame. Like, oh, look at this stupid guy, he killed himself. I don't think they would want us to do that. I think they would want us to say, look at how brave this person was to show us that this isn't the right thing to do. And we have to stand up and fight against those things happening to us.
Yeah, man. That's you're so right. I'm tearing up a little bit, but
Yeah.
yeah, you caught me there.
Yeah.
But
I'm
yeah,
probably going to cry after this too. But
yeah, it's it's okay because you're so right, and it's so sad because suicide is one of the leading causes of death in young adults and in teens, and it kills. It's one of the leading killers, you know, and it's so sad because I know people who've committed suicide and struggled with mental health issues, and my my cousin, rest in peace, passed away because of mental health issues that weren't addressed, and it's it's sad because maybe if maybe if someone addressed them at a earlier point, things could have changed and he would still be here with here with us right now, and it's 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 an epidemic, and it's just not receiving enough coverage, and hope hopefully you can do everyone can do something about it, even if that involves just talking, checking up on someone, seeing how their day is, seeing if someone's really okay, just reaching out and just making sure that nobody should struggle alone, it's we're all here for each other, and it's it's okay to feel certain ways sometimes. It's okay. Your feelings are valid. You are not right. It's not like, oh, you're not right to have these feelings. It's okay for you to have those feelings, and just you if there's counseling options out there, and there's 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 more and more being created, thankfully. But there's, I don't know. I mean, there needs to be more done, and it's it's mental health has an impact in so many different ways. For example, like there's been studies done that with higher stress rates, there's leads to a negative correlation with GPA. The higher your stress, the lower your GPA. And for example, the higher their stress, the less social support you have. You know, so just having having somebody, trying to, even if that means texting a crisis hotline, if you're going through something that just, there's always something, and you yeah, there's always something. So just, it's tough, being a young adult during these times, but we'll make it through.
Yep, we'll make it through.
Yeah.
Uh, one thing I wanted to point out there is like if we have things like Alzheimer's or cancer, everybody picks up their swords and it's like, even as kids, they're like, I want to be a scientist. I want to research this. I want to put on the lab coat. I want to get the pipette and study these cancer cells or Alzheimer's. And you have these big, big organizations and these charity walks and all these celebrities and everybody going out and being so open and enthusiastic and passionate about these things. But when it comes to somebody dying, or when it comes to um, somebody having a serious problem, we all shut our mouths and we just sit and stare at them. And that's um, that's what I think is so wrong with our society. I'm not saying like for things for Alzheimer's and cancer. I'm not saying those aren't serious, but I'm saying we should at least pay attention to mental health as equally, if not more, than those things. Because
Absolutely.
I don't see any third or fourth or fifth grader going, "Hey, I want to pick up my self and go talk to that person over there who's crying, who's having a bad time." Some kids even make fun of that kid, and that only makes them worse. And it's just so sad because mental health is probably like up there on the death rate level, but we see things like Alzheimer's and cancer, and everybody is like gets up immediately when you mention that, and they're like, oh my god, we're gonna fight that so easily, we're gonna spend all this research. um but I there's definitely like people working towards mental health. I'm not saying nobody is doing that, but for how prevalent it is in society, and how like how I guess impactful it is to everyone of all ages, including
All
people,
races.
all races, everybody, anybody on this planet, for either you're a baby, you're African American, your sexual orientation, it all doesn't matter. You can have something wrong with your mind.
Exactly.
And that's
It's
okay because we aren't meant to be perfect. And if you don't learn how to cope with that, how are you going to do it? You're not expected to know how to treat a broken leg. You're not expected to know how to treat a broken heart, like a literal heart, not like
Yeah.
if you broke up or something like that. You
Yeah.
aren't expected to know how to do those things. But we
Mm-hmm.
learn from experiences like talking like this, listening to things like this, talking with our friends. We learn from those experiences and then we do it and we get past that. Like you said, we're going to get through by doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I want to address. Everybody thinks that like if they're having problems mentally, like and they don't know how to solve it, something is wrong with you. And there is something wrong with you if you think that, but it's not what you're experiencing. It's the fact that you're not confident in yourself to go out and get the resources you need, because being confident in what you think is not necessarily being confident in yourself, which is what I discussed in the last video. But being confident in yourself truly means you're confident in yourself to go get the resources you need to fix your problems. A lot of
Absolutely.
people think, I don't want to talk to this person, it's my issue. In reality, it's everybody's issue.